We are live.
All right. Good morning to you all. My name is Shanika Smith. I'm the chair of the Equity and Engagement Committee. I would like to welcome you to the December 15th, 2023 remote meeting. All council, committee members, and staff are participating virtually. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. We are streaming live on the Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city website. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone by calling 855-925-2801 and entering meeting code 2689. For today's meeting, we also have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. To call in and comment live, use the same number, 855-925-2801, meeting code 2689. Your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. At this point, speakers will need to push *3 to enter the speaker queue. I will now go through and introduce all committee members and staff who are participating virtually. Just give a quick hello when I call your name. Councilwoman Kim Roney.
Good morning.
Councilwoman Sage Turner. She may or may not be with us.
I just made it. Thank you.
You got it? All right. Good morning
Thanks.
to you. Okay. Assistant City Manager Rachel Wood.
Good morning.
All right. City Attorney Brad Branham.
Good morning, everyone.
Director of Community and Regional Entertainment Facilities Chris Porrell.
Good morning.
Director of Equity and Inclusion Brenda Mills.
Good morning.
Director of Communication and Public Engagement, Dawa Hitch.
Good morning.
Language Accessibility Communication Specialist, Ricardo Tapio Bercerta.
Buenos días.
All right, good morning to you all. And we'll move right into the top of our agenda for today. Can I get a motion to approve?
This is Kim, so moved.
Second.
All righty. Okay, I'll do a roll call vote for approval of November 30th meeting minutes. Councilwoman Roney.
So, yes, aye.
Aye.
Councilwoman Turner. All right, myself, and the motion carries. And we'll move right on to the top of our agenda. We have the city's Juneteenth celebration and Dr. Martin Luther King Day update. It's a contract that we're going to discuss on today. I think it's for the purpose of information sharing. I don't think there is an action to be taken, but Chris, you can take it away.
Morning, and you are correct. There's not action requested. This is more of an update at the moment. But yeah, so we're here to talk about the Martin Luther King Jr. Day and Juneteenth celebrations, and specifically adding MLK Jr. Day into one of the city's celebrated federal holidays. Next slide, please. So our main takeaways are that the Dr. MLK Jr. Association of Asheville Buncombe County successfully executed last year's Juneteenth celebration on behalf of the city. It was a week-long set of events. We're now recommending a 3-year renewal of the original 1-year production agreement with the MLK Association. We're also recommending incorporating the MLK Peace March and Rally, which is produced every January in MLK Jr. Day, into the next production agreement. Adding the MLK Peace March and Rally will increase the city's catalog of federal holiday ceremonies to a total of 6 productions supported by the city each year. Next slide, please. A little bit about the MLK Jr. Association here in Asheville. They're a regional leader in promoting and honoring diversity through programming and activities. They celebrate the life and teachings of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Through an array of programs throughout Western North Carolina. They provide a forum through which teachers, students, and members of the general public can attain information and teaching on social and diversity issues throughout the area. And they promote development of character, integrity, leadership, and scholarship of young people of Western North Carolina, so they will become better equipped to understand diversity issues and accept the mantle of community leadership. Next slide, please. They're a very qualified organization. So dating back to 1982, They've brought elected and appointed officials, major civil rights figures, journalists, and other leaders and opinion makers to address the Asheville community. The MLK Junior Prayer Breakfast is one of the most successful and admired in the Southeast, second in attendance only to the event in Atlanta every year. And the work of the association has expanded beyond just the Martin Luther King Jr. Day itself to include youth celebrations, candlelight services, and the Peace March and Rally within the year-round programming focused on empowering residents living in Asheville and Buncombe County through educational outreach, workshops, and seminars. And last year, they added the special event of the city's Juneteenth celebration to their repertoire. Next slide, please. So the scope of work that we're discussing with them for Juneteenth of 2024 through 2026 includes 4 occasions of lunch and learn sessions, which some of you may have attended last year leading up to Juneteenth. These happen at our Parks and Recreation centers. They're free to the public, featured a catered lunch, followed by local leaders speaking on topics such as historical facts of Juneteenth, reflections of life in Black Asheville, and slave records and African-American cemeteries. There'll also be a distinguished speaker. Sorry about the fire trucks. There'll be a distinguished speaker presentation and reception at a location to be determined. This will be free and open to the public, but will require advanced registration. The Juneteenth speaker presentations and reception will be hosted by a celebrity speaker with light food and refreshments. We're also going to be adding a Juneteenth gala this year, which will be a celebratory commemoration of Juneteenth. This will be like a wrap-up event for the week of Juneteenth. This will be a tie or no tie gala, free and open to the public, again with advanced registration. Guests will enjoy catered appetizers, alcoholic at a cash bar, and non-alcoholic beverages, live band, dancing, silent auction, presenting a variety of local treasures, and highlighting some of our most talented entrepreneurs and artists of color. And then the week will wrap up with a collaboration of the Juneteenth Festival in Downtown After 5. So in cooperation with Asheville Downtown Association, the June Downtown After 5 will celebrate with music, food, and entertainment of Black Asheville, decorated in Pan-African colors. And we're hoping the stage will come alive with an assembly of musical genres, including rhythm, blues, soul, calypso, and jazz. So really kind of incorporating a lot of new aspects in replacement of having that festival in Pack Square Park like we had last year. Next slide, please. So to give you an idea of project budget, we're suggesting the following breakdown that you see here. So starting in 23-24 fiscal year, total cash support of $20,800 plus a 10% contingency. And we're building in a 5% escalator for years 2 and 3 of the contract, just as costs continue to quickly be rising. And then we're also estimating an in-kind value of around $3,500 or $1,350, related to the community center rentals that we would be waiving with Parks and Rec. Next slide, please. So we would also be recommending adopting the MLK Peace March and Rally for 24 through 26, like I mentioned earlier. This takes place on Roger McGuire Green in Pack Square Park. It's been really successful. I mean, I've personally never attended, but every picture I've seen has been a full park, and I've heard wonderful things and read a lot of great articles about it afterwards. Our commitment to this, if adding into our list of 6 holiday events, would be an estimated in-kind value of about $4,440 in FY24, which would likely grow between 3 and 5% each year for the following 2 years of the agreement. Next slide, please. So just a wrap up of what our holiday ceremonies are. Memorial Day is our first every year, followed by Juneteenth, Independence Day, the Holiday Parade, and Veterans Day. You can see the years that each of these were adopted. So if we add the MLK Peace March here in 2024, that would kick off in January with our first holiday event, really helping spread them out throughout the year. And with that, I will take any questions or thoughts. Yeah, Councilmember Rooney.
Thanks, Chris. Can you go back to the slide with the estimated value of the MLK March? Or the next one. It's got the I guess the in-kind services.
Yeah, forward 3.
The next to last slide.
Yep.
While we're setting that up, this is really exciting to see continued growing collaboration. The MLK breakfast is known for excellence in programming and bringing the community together. Downtown After 5 sounds like a really great partnership as well. This is not about these events per se, but except for I expect that this will kind of read as an expectation of what folks could expect for a cost if one were to apply for another event. So does this kind of line up with if someone else or another group wanted to host an event and have, for example, 4 hours of law enforcement, parking closures, barricades? This is what they could expect to pay if they were going to host an event.
Yeah, these are the actual costs that MLK Peace March would be paying in January if it were not a partner event.
Okay, thank you. Otherwise, just thank you for bringing forward this recommendation.
Yeah, much appreciated. I think the only question that I have is transitioning from the programming that we had the last 2 years to this model right here. I was just wondering if there is opportunity for community vendors to be involved. And I think there is an opportunity with the Downtown After 5 collaboration, but I just wanted to hear you express it.
Yeah, so realistically, it will not have as much opportunity as the past setups with the festival in Pack Square Park, just because of footprint. But there were opportunities last year at the Lunch and Learns for a few community vendors, and then also, yes, with the Downtown After 5, there's opportunity there. The big challenge with the festival is just there's a lot of work and staff time, both on MLK Association and city staff time, come to put together for that. Not a lot of great revenue opportunities to offset the costs. And so this is trying to really spread out the event over a week and not have one big festival that has the opportunity to really just become like a big party downtown with lack of controls. And so this is really a great way to be more meaningful with what's done with the event.
And in years past, I believe that maybe last year there was an RFP set for event leadership here. What happened in this process?
Yeah, so we did an RFP before the 2023 festival. And the way we built that was that we could select somebody, and then if year 2023 went well and both groups wanted to continue forward, we would have the ability to extend that. So
Okay.
That's what we did. MLK Association was willing to come back. On the city side, the reviews through all the different departments were great.
Okay.
And so we decided to
Okay, that's the part I just didn't know. I didn't know that was a part of like a possible renewal was a part of that conversation. I was just very cautious about last year, and I didn't know if they wanted to continue because we ran into some safety issues. So it sounds good to me. I don't have any questions as of now. I mean, beyond what I asked already. Anybody else from the committee have any questions for Chris before we move on? All right, thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to our standing reparations update from Brenda Mills. I believe this might be your last meeting, Brenda.
I think so. I'll be attending the one in January, but I don't think I'll have a presentation. But thank
But we'll see you.
You see me. Yes. Thank you,
Wilson.
Madam Chair and fellow councilwomen. So our monthly reparations update. Next slide. Thank you, Katie. So our key takeaways today is we're giving you a general update of the December 4th meeting. We had several questions, or more than several questions, from the November 6th meeting, which we updated the commission on in December. We reviewed the reparations budget and funding to date, both the city and the county. We reviewed the land remaining from urban renewal. They had asked about that. We prepared a document. We updated them on the extension requests by the CRC. The impact focus area draft recommendations working session began in this month which included a joint presentation by Economic Development and Education. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then the work continues to progress on the cease to harm audit with initial findings ready for review in January. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we followed up with a number of questions from the November 6th meeting. There were questions around the budget. There was a clarifying question around the Tequity contract, which was our initial project manager. But the contract was reassigned to Civility Localized. And Civility Localized is still working with us as project administrator. So taking care of the stipends and the pay of the facilitators until April of next year. And then we have a separate contract that we're putting together for the facilitator, current facilitator. There was a clarifying question around the difference between the format of the city's budget and the county. That format difference is because the city's funding from White Labs was provided to us to provide funding for the activities for reparations. The county approved their budget a year later, and the county commissioners do not want any money spent unless it's on straight recommendations. So other than the interlocal agreement where we're paying for the cease to harm audit, and that's been the only expenditure that they've had to date. And we noted that we noted to the Reparations Commission that we'll update that budget monthly, so they'll get an up-to-date budget each month when they come in. We also provided them a document looking at the land from urban renewal that we set in moratorium. You did that as a council. There was a question around the land acquisition program. I think one of the members of the Housing IFA asked if that recommendation was still intact, and it is. And then there was a question to confirm the remaining land. So I think there was a bit of a surprise that we didn't have a large portion or footprint of land, but at least they have that information for now. Next slide, Katie. And an update on the extension request. So in the September 18th meeting, a resolution was presented by a member of the CRC to extend their process for 2 years to April 2026. In October, at their October 16th meeting, the members voted, after a discussion, they voted to extend it, asked to extend it to December 2024, and that they would provide a detailed justification per staff's request. At the November 6th meeting, they revisited the extension and request and did not provide additional justification. Didn't feel like that was necessary. They felt like it was a lot of the justification was in the resolution, the original one that was written by the CRC member. And then November 21st, the Board of County Commissioners received the briefing from their staff and supported continued staff support through June 30th, 2024. December 4, the CRC requested to discuss the extension request directly with the City Council. The CRC Chair, Dr. Dwight Mullen, was added to the December 12th City Council agenda. So the December 7th City Council briefing, staff briefed you on the extension request. And then Dr. Mullen, Chair of the CRC, was added to presentations and reports on the December 12th City Council meeting. And I think you remember what your results were, which was after results of the cease to harm and after some level of community engagement, they would be coming back sometime March, April to give you an update of where they are. Next slide. So the impact focus area groups are looking at a couple of things. There's a link to the plan schedule. So this month was education and economic development. We're putting them together in groups where they have joint recommendations that they want to present. So a full presentation was provided of their individual recommendations, along with where they have some synergy with joint recommendations. There were suggestions, questions, and thoughts around the recommendations. The IFA facilitators presented this. They took copious notes around that. We'll be having them come back with some updated information on their recommendations. And as they meet each month, we will keep those presentations on their meeting agenda and any updates to those recommendations. And we're hoping that they will incorporate those, and then we will provide those to the full commission. But also we're trying to get probably the full gamut of where they're going with recommendations, so we can start helping them support them as staff, and the IFA facilitator can start to work with them to move us forward on some of those recommendations. We would like to go ahead and have enough really good time to review those as staff for any of the recommendations that they would like for us to review. Next slide. So the cease to harm audit is going well. The initial findings will be presented to the commission at their January meeting. He is bringing his full complement team. So each of the teams that work in the different 7 areas we listed below will be there in person. The final report is still on schedule to be delivered at the end of February. Presentations to the City Council and Board of Commissioners is being planned for March of 2024. The 7 areas are the 5 focus areas that we have, with the inclusion of internal workforce or human resources and equity and legal. Next slide. So as we mentioned, did a lot of updates city, county-wide for the Reparations Commission on answering questions, the reparations budget, remaining land and the extension. The impact focus area draft recommendations were looked at by economic development and education in particular. And then the work continues to progress on the cease to harm audit, with initial findings due in January. And then I'll take any questions if you have any for me. Thank you. Yes, Councilwoman Roney.
Well, first I'll just say thank you, Brenda, for the report back as usual. My question is actually for my colleagues here, Councilmember Smith and Turner. I'm still hearing 2 lingering questions that I guess we didn't provide enough clarity on at our council meeting on Tuesday. One is, do we support the recommendation for the extension of the timeline for the Community Reparations Commission to still meet through 2024? I would like for us to support that. I support it. But if we weren't clear, or if we're in a different place on this, what does it look like for us to articulate that better? Could we make a recommendation from this group? Should we consider it January and bring that to the full council? Like, how do we get some more clarity around that? Because I don't think that we want this lingering engagement about, I would love to see engagement around how we're going to get to different outcomes in the social determinants of health, not whether or not we're going to still meet and get the work done, but maybe in a different place. Okay, I guess.
No, I'm thinking, I think it was to me, it was very clear about our game plan. Our game plan is to get 2 recommendations. And then once we get the recommendations with incorporation of what was the findings from the audit, then we can come back to the table and determine as a collective how much time is necessary. So it's not a yes nor a no type of thing. It's kind of like, let's reach some milestones and forecast how much time might be needed, and what the scope of work would be beyond the recommendations being submitted to the 2 bodies.
Okay. If that's like going to be a collective position, are we willing to do that if the county doesn't continue staff support? Are we just going to do that on our own? I guess that's probably why there's a lingering question, is the county saying our support. When I was in the meeting, I was hearing the staff support from the county will end with the fiscal year. So is the city going to hold that? It's still a lingering question in the community. It's still a lingering question with me. So I guess maybe we need to have some conversations as the recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, we can't really answer for the county. Maybe someone online will have more about why they made their determination, but I think they were pretty clear that they will discontinue a certain level of support in June. But the city is committed to carry on as long. I heard the city manager say the city is willing to continue on and offer support as support is needed.
maybe it could look like an instruction that we could give to staff to articulate that as like a statement, or I don't know if it needs a motion or support. I just know that if I can continue to have one-on-one phone calls and one-on-one emails, but there's still like a general confusion at an organizational level. If it looks like us sending forward a recommendation to staff to send out a statement that's public or some sort of synopsis of the conversation that we had on Tuesday, that might help.
And that clarity might be gathered at the next reparations meeting. I'm sure that all representatives will be present or have representatives at that meeting who can speak to that, do some level setting so that we're all on the same page. I don't know if this room is the place to make those determinations.
Okay.
All righty, we'll move on. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you always.
I still have one more question for us. Is the budget, because I think that we should be prepared to have a conversation about the budget. What I'm hearing is the county budget is set aside for the recommendations, but ours is being used for implementation of the meetings. And I expect that from the future meetings of the CRC, we will hear more about maybe we should take a different path forward. So I just wanted to name that if those are still the two lingering questions are, does this have council and city support? And why is there a differential in the way the budget is being handled? So as we move forward, this is the meeting where those reports come to before they go to council. So I think we should be prepared for some more recommendations.
That's fair.
So Councilmember Roney, just to clarify, are you requesting that we add to a future agenda a discussion of how the budget is currently managed and then seek feedback from the committee regarding some potential considerations as we're going through the budget process?
I think right now, just keeping these regular reports on our agenda is enough. I'm just trying to signal that these are ongoing questions that I anticipate us needing an answer for in the future.
Okay, understood. Thank you for the clarification.
We're good? Okay. Let's move on to our ARPA Upfit Community Space update, a regular update from Dawa.
Good, officially afternoon, committee members. My name is Dawa Hitch, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Communication and Public Engagement Director for the city. I will be doing this presentation solo today. I see here we have Logan Smith also listed on here, but Mr. Smith and his family have just welcomed a new baby into the world and will not be able to join us today. So I'll be taking the whole presentation myself. We can move on to the first slide, key takeaways. This project that I'm briefing you all on is a component of our ARPA Inclusive and Accessible Government Project. And this particular component of it aims to enhance neighborhood and climate resilience. And that's through supporting vulnerable communities through better access to information and decision making. In this project, the intent is to upfit 5 community spaces with technology for virtual meetings and emergency communication. The project is in the initial engagement phase and is on track for completion by the end of fiscal year 24. And as a summary, several vulnerable neighborhoods have been identified for intentional engagement around this opportunity, and exact locations will be finalized through community collaboration in the spring. So we'll dig into a little bit more of the meat of this project. Next slide, please. All right, well, here's the overall project. I won't spend a lot of time here. We've been giving regular updates, but there are 4 components to this project: hybrid meetings, community engagement academy, language accessibility, and then this one, the upfit of community spaces for access to local government. Total project budget for this, the suite of components within this project is about $514,000. Next slide. All right, so with this component, our goals, we've got an image here on this slide where you can see we've got a community member that we were able to pipe in to a meeting that was happening at the Harris Cherokee Center. So this visual is a good example of what we're looking to do with the installation of this technology. The things that are driving it, of course, is inclusive government. So again, we want to equip those selected community spaces with technology that will allow for enhanced remote participation. There's also the opportunity for emergency response support. So there is this opportunity within this component of the project to establish a virtual link for emergency briefings to ensure timely communication. And then again, we just want to state clearly that our intent is to prioritize community input in this. This is really focused on meeting people where they are currently meeting, as opposed to the city assuming that we know where people will meet. So we want to collaborate with our community members, with residents of Asheville, to identify and develop those hubs for community engagement and resilience. Next slide. All right, so for this component, there's $75,000 budgeted, and the proposal was that 2 spaces could have a budget of up to $30,000, and 3 spaces could have a budget up to $5,000. And I want to spend just a second here to say that what we want to do is to provide, to support the environment that is necessary for this remote participation. So it could be that there's tables or chairs that are needed in a space where people are meeting, or maybe a generator, in addition to that technology tools that would be AV equipment, for example, and televisions, things like that, so that folks could be piped in. So we've got a budget for some larger scale investments in 2 spaces, and then 3 spaces smaller. That's more the AV tech kind of option. We'll have a budget of up to $5,000. So the spaces, how will we identify what these 5 spaces are? Again, we'll be working in collaboration with local communities, and then we'll be focusing on areas of high vulnerability as indicated in the climate justice map. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the coming slides. Then finally, a focused application process will be conducted in spring of 2024. And then we intend to have the equipment and the agreements in place and up and running by the end of June of 2024. Next slide. All right, so here's a timeline. You can see that Logan, who's not able to join us today, has been working hard on the initial environmental scan and the initial engagement. That's a lot of internal work, just making sure that what we've proposed to do works with the funding restrictions that are in place, and we're feeling really good about that. January and February, we'll be working on that application process. Some of that work has taken place, and we're really going to lean into the learnings we've had from our neighborhood matching grants process and incorporate that. That's been a very successful program, and we want to build on those successes. In March through April, we're looking at launching that process. And again, we'll be engaging with communities along the way at the neighborhood level. And then May and June, we'll be making those evaluation decisions and then getting that equipment installed. So again, this is a loose timeline, but just wanted to give you all an overall picture of what's going to be happening in the coming months. Next slide. All right, so what's happened? We spoke about this initial engagement. So a big part of this was using the climate justice map, index map, to help identify those neighborhoods. And then we wanted to overlay those over our neighborhood map. So we got a good idea of where we want to do that intentional outreach and engagement when we get to the application process. We've also done just a quick listing of city and county owned spaces. So we've got an idea of what is already in place. But again, I want to reiterate that the intention here is to really hear from the community about where they are already meeting. So also in progress, we've been working with our ARPA coordinator, our risk management staff, and the project team to make sure that we've got everything laid out so that we've got a strong foundation for this project. And then we've begun developing some of the surveying tools that we'll want to use as we reach out to neighborhoods in our most vulnerable neighborhood, or in our people in our most vulnerable neighborhoods. Next slide. So the climate justice map, and you can see here that we've been able to do an overlay with our neighborhood map. And I just wanted to note that the scores of that were based on a census block group level, and that analysis, these levels of vulnerability, were assessed by looking at the percent of BIPOC population that lives within those neighborhoods, a heat vulnerability index, the energy burden within those areas, information from the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, on social vulnerability, and then of course, climate resiliency threats. So our goal here was to really take a lot of work that is happening in different areas of the city and really work collaboratively, both with emergency management and our Department of Sustainability, to move forward some of the things that you may have heard about in the Municipal Climate Action Plan, around the area of resilience hubs. So this isn't to say that that's going to completely meet all of the ideas that came out of that assessment, but we want to support it so that we can then grow from that work into the work of the Municipal Climate Action Plan. All right, next slide. Okay, so you can see here, so the CJI is the Climate Justice Index scores, and these are not determining factors in what the application process will be, but just wanted to give you all an idea that is one of the criteria, one of the assessment criteria when we're analyzing any applications we get will be these scores. So you can see here some of the neighborhoods that have higher scores: Southside, Shiloh, Altamont Apartments, Bartlett Arms, and then downtown, for example. Again, thinking back to all of the factors that went into that assessment, heat indexes are an example. So there's lots of different reasons why some of these neighborhoods have higher CJI scores. And just wanted to again say that will be a component when we're working through the application process. I won't go through all of them, but did just want you all to have an idea of some of the neighborhoods that were showing up with higher levels. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the internal engagement, we're happy to say that there's minimal ARPA restrictions on the site selection process, which gives us broad flexibility for community-driven choices. So we were really excited to just get some confirmation on that aspect of it. Again, wanting to meet people where they already are. And that could mean perhaps we're talking about a church basement. So wanted to make sure that we were going to be, all of our I's are dotted, T's crossed, if that is what we're hearing from the community is an important neighborhood level meeting space. Also, city and state guidelines will also be considered to ensure compliance and feasibility. And then again, we want to use learnings from current projects such as our neighborhood grants program and our ARPA funded Community Engagement Academy to inform our agreement and application process. Next slide. Okay, so external things that are in process. Our project staff has been developing a neighborhood survey, and what we want to do is to be able, and this is a requirement of those ARPA funds, we want to be able to track with whether or not these investments are having an impact. So we want to get some baseline data before we finalize this project. Again, we want to make sure we're meeting people where they are, and a long-term goal, again, is establishing that baseline to track the impact of the project. Community engagement staff will be distributing the survey in priority neighborhoods over the coming months. So it will be a real partnership across all the disciplines of our department. Next slide. Next steps. So we want to make sure that we're establishing a transparent application process with clear criteria that prioritizes community feedback and inclusivity. We want to intensify the engagement efforts in vulnerable neighborhoods and historically marginalized communities for this opportunity. And we want to develop a diverse menu of technology options that will suit different community space needs. We don't just want to say like, hey, tell us what you need, and maybe folks don't know what they need. So we want to be able to give them some options of things that could work based on our experience here with our hybrid meeting, research, et cetera. And finally, we'll be developing partnership or partner agreements that will ensure effective and accountable use of those resources, particularly in the non-city owned facilities. So next slide, that should bring us to the key takeaways again. All of this work is aiming towards more resilient neighborhoods and climate resilience as a whole. We're looking at upfitting 5 community spaces. We're on track to have this completed by the end of fiscal year 24. And we'll be looking at, we'll be doing a lot of intentional outreach to vulnerable neighborhoods. And the exact locations will be finalized through community collaboration in the spring. I'm happy to, thank you for this opportunity to give an update on this project. I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee might have. Councilmember Roney.
Thank you so much, Dawa. I can tell there's a lot of intention going into resource mapping and peeling back all the different layers of the ways that we can serve our community better. And I guess the curiosity I have is downtown had a pretty high ranked CGI score, but what does that look like, because there were like a cluster of neighborhoods within that score to then also simultaneously look at where we already have the most places for people to gather and meet. So for example, though downtown has a high score, we are able to host public meetings in City Hall.
So thank you so much for the opportunity to raise that point and expound on it a little bit more, because it's very important. I want to make sure everybody listening in today understands that just because there is a high CJI score, that's not the be all end all. There's other considerations that will need to be taken into consideration. One of those being the resources that are available in an area. So that's why we needed this time to really dig into, what problem are we trying to solve, and does our application process prioritize some of the gaps that we know exist throughout our community.
Thank you. And also the one thing that I'm kind of missing that I hear people talk a lot about is transportation. So it may be that we've identified a need for shuttles. But for example, if we know that a neighborhood doesn't have transit service past 7:30, they can maybe get to the meeting, but they can't get home. So I didn't see the way you get to and from a location being named explicitly, and I just wanted to make sure that was covered.
Thank you so much for that input. And those are, I can affirm that those are the kinds of conversations that we're having as we get to the evaluation matrix that will ultimately help us decide where the fund or who will be awarded these opportunities. But those barriers that you mentioned, whether transportation specifically, things like childcare, where we know having something in close proximity can increase the opportunities for people to participate, will be reflected in those criteria.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for the questions.
I'm sure we're doing targeted outreach, because all the work that you've been doing over the years, we kind of know where people gather and they feel comfortable in certain social centers. But I'm wondering, how do we reach spaces that have a lot of potential and people know about them, but they're not on our radar?
And that's what thank you. I really appreciate that question, and that external engagement, that really listening to, because I am sure there are places that are not on our radar. I am certain.
Yeah.
And so really taking that lead, that the Climate Justice Index is a bit of a roadmap for us to know that we got to get in there on the ground if we don't have existing connections in those neighborhoods, to make sure that we get to those neighborhood associations and really hear from people. Well, where are you? Where are you currently meeting? And that's where those ideas, like lots of times churches can be a place in neighborhoods where people gather, but wanting to have a important dialogue with the people that live in that area about that, and to see if we can support them in coming to some kind of consensus about what they would like to apply for.
This is exciting. Thank you for all your hard work.
Oh, thank you.
All right. I think you have the next
I
item.
did.
You can go on.
All right. So yes, Katie, we're going to move into our next presentation, another component of this ARPA Inclusive and Accessible Government project. And supporting and assisting and really leading on this presentation will be our team member, Ricardo Tapia Basurto, who serves as a language accessibility communication specialist. He's been doing a lot of great work, and I can't wait for him to be able to share that with you all. I'm going to tee it up with some higher level information, and then I'll be turning it over to Ricardo. So let's go next slide. If we've done a great job today, hopefully you all are walking away with an understanding, our audience as well, that this project too aims to support resilience both at the neighborhood level and for some of the climate threats that we know we'll be facing. It's been 1 year since the appointment of Ricardo as our language accessibility specialist. It's hard to believe, it's flown by. And I'm so pleased to share today that a language accessibility assessment has been completed and is available to departments as part of the the fiscal year 25 budget planning process. So we're going to dig into some of those details today. Additionally, there's been a number of operational improvements under Ricardo's leadership that have been implemented, including regular translation of City Council and City Council committee agendas, and an improved system for requesting language accommodations at City Council meetings. All right, next slide. Again, one of 4 components of the ARPA project. This is language accessibility. Total project budget for all those components is about $514,000. Part of that I would like to mention specifically in this presentation would be the indirect money to the community. And that is where we've got this position budgeted. So it's a 2-year position. Next slide. So our current city resources, just to kind of give an overview of where we are today, we've got website translation, both for the city website and social media platforms. I think we all know that those automatic translation tools are in place. We're going to talk a little bit more about taking that to the next level. We've got document translation. We can do Spanish in-house and then any other language through contract. We've got online and on-site interpretation. We've got Spanish in-house and online, and then on-site and any other language through a contract, and that does include American Sign Language. Finally, we've got the over-the-phone interpretation. This is a resource that both our public safety departments are using, as well as water. And I did want to note today, just as we've been able to do some trainings across the organization and make sure that all departments know about these tools, just wanted to note that the water department has used here in the last few months over 100 or right around 108 minutes. So you can see here in this graph that with the education that Ricardo's been able to do, we're bumping up people's awareness of the tools, and people are really embracing it and taking advantage of it. All right, so I am now going to turn the presentation over to Ricardo to talk about the progress that's been made.
Muchas gracias. Next slide, please. Yes, excellent. So what are some of the specific progress that we have made? As that was already mentioned, the City Council and committee meetings agendas are already available in Spanish. That's part of our regular practice that we're doing, and hopefully we'll be seeing this in other documents. We have a regular fulfillment of translation requests like in-house. So just from May through November, we had a total of 53 requests for document translation to Spanish, including like the Parks and Recreation like program guides, which are like these quarterly programs with like all the activities that are being doing in the department. So those are directly for the community. We have implemented a plan for live interpretation and council and committee meetings. So whenever someone needs, because wants to participate or intervene, it should be normal for us, and it should be aware for them that they can do it without any problem, and there will be interpretation available. We have started like pushing for more social media messages and graphics in Spanish. We have started and pushing with some training opportunities. During the last few months, I offered like some Spanish courses for city staff. We're recalling those, and next year we'll continue like pushing with this activity. So any department can request Spanish training in a basic level so they can assist. We have also identified forms and procedures that should be a priority for translation, forms for requesting information, sign releases, stuff like that. So far, we have translated 6 forms or informational documents for transportation, parks and recreations, and department. We will continue doing so. So we have materials that can be regularly handed out at any position. And as I mentioned, although we have like automatic web translation built up on the city website, we have come recently with the use of G-Translate that allowed us to edit the translation and make it more accurate, because sometimes the automatic translation that we will see, it will be quite literal and have a lack of like cultural sensibility. So we have to be aware of what we're doing. So at least we have like the ability to edit the Spanish translated text to ensure accuracy and precision. Next slide, please. How we get to this progress? Well, we started by having, we had like 18 meetings as a starting point with pretty much like all departments, where we identified challenges, collected ideas, suggestions. We promoted the use of current services. But after these 18 meetings, we have continued having significant engagement, not only with department directors and coordinators, but also with many of our frontline staff. So on multiple regular meetings, we have been getting like firsthand experiences, and that has helped us to improve and develop materials and shape our understanding. Next slide, please. Based on all these like information, the input received for developing the assessment has been quite diverse. It's clear, like among our city staff, it's important, it's recognized as an importance to recruit and incentivize multilingual staff, especially for frontline positions. It's recognized that it will be necessary and important to have a directory of staff proficient in different languages, so we know really the strengths that we have. Some staff, especially those who are hired for positions, but given their skill, they ended up doing a lot of like translation and interpretation for their colleagues or whenever a customer walks. It has been recognized that they're doing a lot of extra work. So the notion of like a bonus for multilingual staff willing to assist with translation, it's something that has been recognized as a necessity. We're already seeing these happening for police and fire department. It should be worth to take that into consideration for other departments who are at least more public facing. Department have, it's an important like to have a specific plain language and translated FAQ handouts, because if we have clarity of like what each department does, and we can hand those materials or those flyers, if we have those in English, we can have those in any other languages. That's an improvement. As I mentioned, there's a significant interest for having like courses for employees who want to take classes. We already started with the Spanish ones. I led those. There were like, I have to create an extra group. We have over 60 people that register. So there was a lot of interest among our community to take these courses. And I think this is great. We have to continue pushing those, make it more adequate to the necessities and the times. And of course, expand that to Spanish for sure, American Sign Language, maybe other languages at some point. Explore, of course, the possibility of, there's a limitation of the course that we can teach in the city, but maybe explore like other options, like outside, like partnership with different institutions or etc. There's a necessity also for more inclusive spaces that was for reviewing and rehauling our signs, not to make it multilingual, but also to make it like more accurate, visual, representative stuff. So when you walk to any city facility, or you're in a city associate, like a facility, you should be able to navigate it even if you don't are limited English proficient. And finally, on this same line, the necessity of language accessibility accommodations for community engagement efforts. So whenever there's a city-sponsored event, we should try to be mindful of this, whether we have like interpretation available, bilingual staff on site, some bilingual, multilingual materials. So that's sort of stuff that we have identified. Next slide, please. And I would like to take a minute to actually talk about some of the 2 materials that we have prepared, and hopefully next year will be really used to enhance the language accessibility work on all departments. One, as Dawa was mentioning, is the language accessibility assessment. This is a comprehensive guide that evaluates current language services and offers recommendations for enhancing language accessibility through communication and engagement. So what do we have, how we can use it, and pretty much like getting an understanding of that. The second document is a planning document, and this one is an internal planning resource intended to provide departments or city with actions that can improve language accessibility for those with limited English proficiency, or those who are deaf, or those who are hard of hearing. The idea is like these two documents, especially the second one, can be used in the development of organizational or department work plans, priorities, and budget requests. So whenever a department is planning their work ahead, they can go to this material and see some of the actions that they can focus on. They can reach the language accessibility, myself, and then we can help them to work together to include language accessibility in their working plans. Next slide, please. Beginning with the end in mind, that's how this document is structured. We have tables classified in different topics. So policies and procedures, project, people, and places. Those are the topics that we have classified. The tables are identify action steps that could be taken at 3 levels: for the city of Asheville as an organization, at a department level, or for the Cape department in a specific. And each specific action step has like an estimation of details to provide a sense of like the cost, the time, and the impact of each potential action. Just like when you go to a wings place and you see like, oh, it has like 3 out of 5 chilies, that's the level of spiciness. This is the level of like potential cost, time, or impact that we're expecting on each project. Talking for example, with the cost, if it's only $1 bill sign, it probably means like it has no extra cost. It's an internal organization developing, but there's no cost associated. If it has 2 ones, means like it's possible to do it with the current funding, printing current flyers, or like paying for an advertising. Well, we already have funds associated for certain things, so it will cost, but we have budget for that. And if it has like a 3 extra signs, it means like it will require new or specific resources allocated for that thing. So each project is organized that way. Can we go to the next one? The next slide, please. And as you can see, this is just a snapshot of like one section of this document. The tables, as I was saying, identify action steps that could be taken at 3 levels: City of Asheville, department level, and Cape department. When we have that in bolded, that means like these are the action that can be taken for this level. In this case, City of Asheville, 10, 11, and 12 actions. The ones that are in gray, so those are actions that complement, that come afterwards or come before, but should be taken by department or by Cape. And here we're listing some of these ones. For instance, if we see City of Asheville number 11, paid external language education city employees, they should be work alongside the budget process described in City of Asheville number 4. So in order to achieve this one, or the stipend for our registered bilingual employees, well, those 2 actions are achievable in the long term. They most certainly will require time and extra resources, and will have the significant impact. To achieve these points for the city as an organization, we have to work in previous steps that might be worked at every department or at Cape level, depending on it. That's why we have bolded these ones. Then that's pretty much how we organize the material. And as I was saying, this is just a resource, a guide, so departments at the city can have an idea of what we can do. And if there are specific project suggestions or anything else, everyone should be encouraged to reach out to language accessibility specialists at the Cape department to see how it can work. And with this in mind, I will go back to Dawa to explain what comes afterwards.
Okay, thank you so much, Ricardo. And I hope that it's evident that there's been a lot of thought and intention that's gone into these guides that will be available for staff. And I see Councilmember Turner has a question.
Thank you, Ricardo. I'm excited by this. I'm excited by the out-of-the-box thinking that we would just offer training to our staff instead of just trying to recruit more staff. I love it. Can we join? I'm serious. I would love to. Yeah.
I'll be happy. I mean, whatever we can do, absolutely. Welcome to everyone.
I would love to personally. And I love the screenshot for having actual policy things that we can do. I appreciate it.
Councilmember Roney.
Gracias, Ricardo, por trabajar en este proyecto. Thank you for working on this project, Ricardo. I am curious. When I look at the Durham City website, it shows a feature Espanol, and you can click on that. It changes everything on the website to Spanish. That seems like we're like unlocking like a next level feature of not just diversity and inclusion, but belonging. And it seems to me that what you're doing right now is like setting the stage for what that level could look like. And I just wanted to say thank you for like putting together these like measurements that we can kind of see where we need to move. I think this level of understanding the infrastructure that's necessary before we can really engage folks is really powerful. So thank you. One of the things that I learned doing radio is that if you just put stuff on a website that's in Spanish, but then we're not ready to serve people in Spanish, is skipping a really important step of belonging. So I just wanted to say thank you to Dawa and Ricardo and the team for doing this work, but also adding to our understanding at this level.
Thank
Is
you.
that translation? Isn't that part of the G Suite tool? Doesn't it do the website for you?
Yes.
Yeah, but as Ricardo mentioned, then you don't have the cultural references. You might do like a direct translation, but you still have to have like the supportive staff behind that can make sure that you're actually communicating what you intended to.
Yeah, it is a pretty strong tool. I feel like it's gotten better and better and better. But yeah.
Yeah, there's like a difference, if I may, in within like building an entire different website and duplicating and being to a language. So that's a different level of like a reach out that it requires more like effort into it. We're working to getting towards that. And to the other point, like Council Woman Ronnie was mentioning, it's absolutely true. If we want to provide like services to the public, and of course, if we advertise that, we have to have the internal institutional capacity to do so. Otherwise, if we advertise, hey, Ben, come on, we got you. And then it's like, oh, but we really don't have that much of an idea how to do it. It will be problematic. So that's why we're focusing on building up our ability to do so we can reach out better.
And I mean, even teenagers have caught on to the problems with AI and automatic translation. You can now take songs, translate them into another language, and then translate them back into English and see how incorrect the auto translate is. If you want to go that route with your time.
Oh, well, I thank you all so much for these questions and comments. And we wanted to bring this to you all. Ricardo, I just have to say again, has just done amazing work in this area, and the inclusive way that he has approached this, really giving a nod to the importance of internal engagement as well, has just been remarkable. So now we have these tools, and now what stage of it. So we're coming to you today. If we could go to the next slide. So we've mentioned that this is a tool that departments can use in their budget planning and organizational work planning and departmental work plan planning. And just wanted to give the committee an opportunity. Here are some that we've drawn from that, from the resource that has been created, to just get a pulse as we're working to support departments in their budget development. If there are any of these that really rise to the top of the committee's radar, that we can then share with departments as they're looking at their budget requests in this coming year. Councilmember Roney.
Yeah, I agree that building from within and creating that sense of belonging within our organization is really wise. So the stipends for registered bilingual employees and external language education for our staff could be really powerful. And as we grow within the organization, also maybe that's a way to recruit more folks who are interested in the kind of services we offer. Of course, bilingual signage, like I think about when I'm on the bus and I see that there's going to be like a route change or a holiday closure, and I see it in multiple languages, it has helped me to be able to point fellow riders in that direction so they know that they can get information. But if we once again don't have the systems in place to back it up, then we kind of like dead end there. So for me, those two would be the top priority for this moment, sort of like a phase 1 or phase 2, because y'all have already done this part of phase 1.
Same for me. I like Sage comment when she said that instead of adding on more staff, we're building the capacity of staff members that we have. I think that has a lot of different benefits to be relatable and build our sense of belonging and our compassion for community. So I would say stipends for registered bilingual employees and the paid external language education.
I would also be curious to know what the staff like recommendation is if we're right on the right track, like with Ricardo's experience, like does that make sense?
I will put like I think like the training, it's like the training internal that we can do in the short to medium term, it's not going to put anyone in a point that there can be conversational realistically. It's going to put it in a pit when they can assist, get basic instructions, indication, and refer to someone that speaks the language or to refer to the use of the interpretation services. Realistically, that's what we can achieve with the internal training in the short to midterm. Long term, I would love to be able to maybe develop like a full course or something, but that will be far more ambitious, like a option that I think internally we can do. So
that makes me think that if we have signage in place and we're growing our internal capacity, then we still have a gap. So we almost need to prioritize the hotline while we're building capacity.
I'm going to throw a little different thing in here and talk about language access standards and contracting, because we talk a lot about contracts and services and minority companies and whether or not we are reaching them and contracting with them. So there's multiple parts here. Like, I want to say all of these things. But I think the education for employees and standards in contracting might move the needle faster than the others, in my opinion.
And we can certainly, so when we're thinking about next steps with this input and feedback that we're getting from you all, it will really be to share what we've heard today with different departments who might have budgeting opportunities within these areas. I will say on the language access standards and contracting, what we were really thinking there was a lot in the area of engagement, for example, that we might want to make that a standard as we're developing scope of work for bringing on an engagement consultant, that part of that requires that any of the signage that they do or materials that they're preparing as part of that engagement would be in English and Spanish, say, or potentially Russian as well, given where we're working in the city. So I just want to be real clear about what the standards we're talking about. They're more on kind of on an operational level of just what we as a city who is committed to language accessibility would require of anybody that we're contracting with. Councilmember Roney.
Is there like a best practices we could point to that we don't have to freestyle this necessarily? I'm thinking about the GARE program, or can we call some peer cities in North Carolina? Durham's the one that I'm familiar with because I've used their site in Spanish, but maybe there's another way that we could see what next steps look like that are best practices.
Absolutely. And I do know, I don't want to put you on the spot, Ricardo, but I know that in his environmental scan that he looked at a lot of national resources for how to kind of develop his approach to developing the assessment. And we can continue just on operational level to look at what other cities have done and see if we can glean any hurdles or wins that they've had so that we can take advantage of their experience. Ricardo, would you want to add anything there?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really good point. Federally, there's like the LAP.gov website, which is like the LenglishProficiency.com website, which provides a lot of information, resources, and samples from different network. Additionally, of course, we have sample like what like other cities in North Carolina have been doing. And I personally belong a national organization of local government employees who works on language accessibility, where we're constantly sharing information and sharing resources, things we're doing in Seattle, Baltimore, and so. So yeah, I mean, part of the challenge is like how we can adapt all these ideas and how we can implement that. and how we can adjust it as well. I was attending an event like a few weeks ago led by the city of Boston, when they were explaining like all the steps that they have taken towards that. It is fascinating. They were saying like they started like pushing they created an Office of Language Accessibility in 2018. So they were saying we have been working 5 years towards this project. So it's like, okay, makes perfect sense to see how they headed towards that area in particular, and the characteristic of a city of the size of Boston. So yes, we're continuously reviewing and adapting to see how we can implement it in the city for sure.
All right, so if we could go to the next slide. Thank you again, committee members, for all of that the conversation and the helpful input and feedback. I mentioned before that we've got next steps, and we mentioned the budget planning process, organizational and departmental work plans, and then also departmental equity action plans. Again, this tool will be available for departments as they move through each of those on our annual cycles. And then next slide. So just to wrap everything up, this project is again aimed towards resiliency, and that's both for at the neighborhood level and in response to climate changes. We're 1 year in to having this 2-year position, this language accessibility specialist, and a lot of great work has taken place. And our organization now has this language accessibility assessment as a resource. And while all of that was happening, we were also implementing a lot of operational changes so that our community's experience with us has been improved in this area. That concludes our presentation.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. Kim?
Oh, that was a mistake. Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right, we have a lot of big things popping in the area of equity and engagement. Today was an exciting meeting. Before we end today, do we have anyone in the speaker queue?
One moment, I will check.
All righty.
No, we do not.
All right, any final comments from the committee or staff before we conclude?
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you
Happy
all.
holidays.
Bye, y'all.